Hello and welcome back to this Social Media Magic podcast. I'm Brittany Verlenich. So glad that you're listening in today, or maybe watching a clip, depending on where you're seeing this or hearing this. And today I'm excited for this conversation, even just from our little pre-recording. Is it Sandra or Sandra? I should have asked before we started recording and I didn't ask.
No worries. It's Sandra. I get that question all the time. I always say, I'm Sandra. I'm not fancy. Just
Sandra, nice to meet you, Sandra, officially. And Sandra Booker is from Any Old Task, and she has an interesting perspective because she's been both a VA and then she's in the OBM world herself, and she also helps VAs. So I think she has a really interesting perspective to share as someone who's helped business owners to be able to streamline their processes and figure out how to decide what's next, which is what we're really going to be talking about today. And then we're also going to be hearing, I think, from her perspective of someone who has worked with them, like some things that she's seen, because sometimes I think as business owners ourselves, we can struggle with self-awareness and knowing what we're not seeing, where we're at. And so all the information that we're learning and filtering through is through that lens of where we are and where we're at. So glad you're here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so happy to be here, Brittany. This is going to be fun.
Yay. Okay. So I asked her before, and this is a hard question. I asked her if there was one thing you'd like for business owners to know right now, what would it be? And she said a few things that I thought were really interesting and they work together. One is assessing your business. The other is that you do not have to listen to what everybody says, which again goes with assessing because you're making that decision, running through the filter of what's next for you. And when I was thinking of titles, just hearing her talk, the title of How to Pick What's Next, I think is really good. And actually, just before we came on to this conversation, I was talking with a client who I'm doing organic Facebook group management and lead generation for her right now, helping her grow her email list. And she's thinking about running ads. And it's interesting because when we look at things like social media, for example, if we're just thinking marketing, we're thinking, okay, I'm going to put up a post on Facebook or Instagram, and it's going to be a picture of my product and say, okay, here's this thing, come buy it. But that's actually not like how social media works in that whole ecosystem of lead generation and sales. And so it can be easy to think, I don't want to do this task. I don't like it. So I'm going to give it to somebody else to do it. But if it's not the right task, or if you're not using the tool correctly, then you're wasting money and time like doubly. And then if you haven't figured out a process yet, you don't even know if it's good enough to do that. So let's start with that. How do you decide what to do next? Can you maybe talk about assessing your business and what that looks like for us?
Yeah, sure. So there are lots and lots of different ways to assess your business, and you should be assessing your business in a couple of different ways throughout the year, monthly, quarterly, weekly, whatever. And it's like what you're going to do is really dependent on what's happening in your business. But the one main way that I like to assess my business regularly is I have what I call the 6 lens assessment, and it is based off of 5 core functions of a business, which you can look up anywhere. And it's basically looking at your business under 6 very specific lenses and deciding, like giving yourself a score and then choosing, like discovering rather, which is the weakest spot in your business and then addressing that bit first. This would be in addition to any of the other work you're doing, right? You're not necessarily stopping all lead generation if you're going to work on conversion. Let your lead generation run as is. You're just not going to put any more effort into it if conversion is where you need the work. So you're looking at your business under the microscope of like lead generation, nurturing, conversion, delivery, retention, resell, and upsell, and then team, both focus and alignment, and skills and knowledge. And even if you are a solopreneur, you want to take a moment to assess, like, me as the only team member I have, am I aligned in my own mission? Do I have a mission? Do I know where I'm going? Do I know what I'm trying to get to? And what does that look like? And am I aligned to that? Or am I constantly getting distracted by all these shiny objects over here? And then 2, do I have the skills and knowledge needed to meet my current goals? Not necessarily my 5-year goals, but like your current, like quarterly goals or yearly goals. Do you have the skills and knowledge to meet those? And when you assess your business in these areas, then you can easily see, like, how sometimes what you need is to bring somebody on your team because you don't have the skills and knowledge, or you need to bring somebody on your team because you have to do something in an area that you're not familiar with and you don't have time to learn it and do it. But you also might find that, oh, I've been pouring all of my time and energy into trying to figure out how to get more leads, but really, when I get down to it, I'm really not converting well, or my customer retention is low. If you're only selling one offer, you're not giving a chance for people to buy anything else. So maybe that's a different offer you need. So it's really about figuring out where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of time and energy and effort into a project.
Yeah, I love that overview. And then I actually love like the idea of like checklists. I feel like teachers, especially or former teachers, love a good checklist. Being able to go through something and thinking criteria, yes, no, I don't know why. It's just so satisfying to do. But what I was saying before, and I think this is where it gets really hard, is if you don't have either the self-awareness or it's that idea of you don't know what you don't know. And then it's you think you need this thing over here based on what your idea of that thing is and what it looks like for you, but you're maybe not ready for it. So as is one thing, I've talked about this on my podcast before. I have picked it up and put it back down so many times because I'm like, I love the idea of it. And I know that it's a future thing for me, but I also know I'm not ready for it yet. I really want to make sure I have items that are like converting really well passively on their own. And that I have all my organic funnel set up. And then I feel like it would make more sense to run ads to it. But if you don't have that level of awareness of like your own bandwidth, of your own time, you even mentioned goals and priorities. If you don't know what your goals and priorities are, then it becomes impossible to be able to know whether or not something is for you or for something for you right now. So how can you get to that point? Like, how do you get to the point where you can assess your business? Because I feel like that's like a skill in itself and it is dependent on these other things. So what would you recommend for someone who I would like to do that, but I don't even know if I know enough to accurately assess it? Would that be that something that like they'd have to go to a coach or consultant for, or do you just have a video that walks them through it? I'm just curious of how they would do that.
Yeah, they could certainly go to a coach or consultant. It's definitely something that I've helped lots of clients go through. I just did a live workshop on it, and it's definitely something you can get help with, but it's also something that's super Googleable. So you can definitely just Google how to assess my business, and you're going to find lots of different ways of doing it. Just pick one and try it and see how it goes. And really when it comes to assessing, because there's a lot of different ways you should be assessing your business, the key is just starting with something. Something is better than nothing. And the more you do that one thing, the better you're going to get at it. So when I first started assessing my business using the 6 lens assessment that I created, the first time I did it, I just wrote down my scores and went, pick this and fantastic. But then 3 months later, when I'm doing it again, I'm like, wait, why did I score myself that? I don't know why. So I actually have a template. I'm happy to share it with everybody if it'll be useful, actually. I do have a template that I created that lets you score yourself in all of those areas. It has a little walkthrough. This is what 1 means. This is what 2 means. And then it has space for you to say, this is why I scored myself this way. And this is what would make me go up to the next level. And this is what I'm going to look at to determine if I've moved on to the next level. Yeah, I'm happy to share that if you think everybody would find it useful, because just doing something would be super beneficial to start creating a practice and a habit and finding other ways to ask questions. But a lot of the time is like just simply asking yourself why. I'm going to do this thing. Why? What's that going to get me? Where do I see the return on the investment? Is that something that's actually going to lead? What's that going to get me down the road? Where am I going to end up at the end of it? And just ask the question a few times during one thought cycle and then really decide before just jumping on things.
I really like that idea of asking why. And it's almost like you're being your own coach or consultant, right? Because if you just say, oh, okay, I should run, I'll use the Facebook ads example again, because I feel like this is something a lot of like service providers, especially, and actually even my audience, because my audience, they sell digital products on a marketplace. And so really a lot of times our problem is traffic, right? Which is why usually organic. So it's if I could just pay for the traffic guaranteed and I know how much I'm getting in, it's the idea of security. But it's the idea of security does not necessarily mean that it's like a magic pill, right? Oh, I just have to pay $200 a month, $300 a month, and then I will make 1,000. That's not necessarily how it goes all the time. I know that in reality, if I ask myself why. So it's like, why do I think that? Oh, why I want have a guaranteed minimum amount of income every month. And so if I do this, like there's usually like a kind of a deeper reason, right? Of, oh, I'm feeling insecure. Oh, I'm feeling insecure about my finances. Okay. So let's look at that and think, what can I do to make myself feel more secure? So from a service provider, do I just need to get a couple more clients? And then maybe I would be a little chilled out on that and I can focus on something else. If I'm a digital product creator, can I add a product line or another product to a product line that's really successful that I know people will be waiting for the next one of that? So I think that shifts your priorities too, of thinking about that. And even just thinking in scarcity. If you're in that stressful like space, you're going to make different decisions and probably not the better decisions than you would if you're coming from a place of, oh, I have a plan. I make enough money and that's all good. And that can be
Yeah.
hard. That can be really
Yeah.
hard because because
It's
usually we're
definitely
assessing.
hard. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
go ahead. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, yeah. And even just thinking about like your example, like another reason, some people might be saying, yeah, I'll do Facebook ads because I know that I'm going to get this. Some people might say, I'm going to get Facebook ads because it's easy. I know how to do it. But some people might say, I'm going to do Facebook ads because somebody told me to do Facebook ads. And it's okay. So then why are you doing something that somebody's telling you to do? And then you start getting into that because I don't really know what I should do. I don't really know what the options are. And sometimes just having a really good brainstorming session, like you're smart, a lot of stuff that you probably don't realize can actually help you in your business. And if you just sat down and thought, okay, so I need to generate X number of leads next month or whatever, I want to increase my leads by X% or whatever you're looking to do. How are all the ways I could possibly do that? Let's just brainstorm and imagine if you couldn't do it wrong, if everything was always going to work out for you, then if everything was possible, then what are all of the ways you can think of? And just don't edit yourself. Don't start, because that's always the natural tendency is to, oh yeah, but then don't edit yourself. Don't say, oh, it's going to be a lot of work. Just like brainstorm, because then you'll have a big list of stuff that you can then pick from. And it won't always just be Facebook ads. Maybe you'll continue to run Facebook ads, but maybe you're also going to do something else, because in business, you really do need a mix of processes, a mix of things coming to you. So you want some short-term plans and some long-term plans. You don't want to just always do one or the other.
100%. I actually was just thinking about this the other day, especially coming from an education background that's it's funny because teachers are creative people, but education is a very rigid environment. Like kids are sitting down X amount of hours a day. I have so many thoughts on that, but won't get into that in this episode. So you have this, like everybody's told what to do every single minute of the day. Teachers are told what to do. And so the reason a lot of us look to leave the classroom, that we're looking to replace what we're doing, is because we want freedom. And then what do? Immediately when we start our own business, we start listening to podcasts, tell me what to do. We watch YouTube videos, tell me what to do. We hire a coach or consultant, tell me what to do. Isn't that so funny? Like we like simultaneously desire freedom, but we want security. So we're looking for someone to like external validation for that security. It's so fascinating to me.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is because people are in a hurry some people are just in a hurry to move things forward. So they just want the shortcut. It's like, why relearn something somebody already knows? They can just tell me how to do it. But also too, is a lot of people are really because most people that I know who started a business, they're not business people. They don't know what they don't know in regards to business. So it's a matter of, what am I doing? I don't even know where to start. So somebody just tell me. But the problem with that is they don't know where you are in your business. So they're not necessarily giving you step one for you in your business. So it's really, anytime you get a piece of advice, you really do need to sit with it and filter it through what you know about you and where you want to go and what you want to do before you just implement blindly.
So true. And I actually, in my last episode that I just recorded or released yesterday, was, whenever you guys listen, it's not going to be yesterday, but that I just released, was about that. It was about how I was sharing my own experience of feeling really overwhelmed by learning. I don't know if you've ever felt this way. You're like, oh my, I'm just inundated, especially because of my position. I'm marketed to by fellow people who coach service providers. And I'm also on other clients' accounts. I'm inundated with their marketing. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so many messages. And I was telling people, between how many summits there are, collaborative bundles, things in my inbox, advertisements you just get when you're mindlessly scrolling, commercials you see when you're watching like Netflix, and then when you're driving, ads, it's so much content. And the brain is naturally filtering things out. We can't remember every single thing that happens to us because we are inundated with so much. But it gets to a point where it can make you feel almost paralyzed because there are some times where I'm like, I actually feel like I'm pretty successful. Like I'm pretty happy with things the way they are. There are some things I'd like to improve, but it's very interesting how quickly you can spiral and think, maybe I should be
Yeah.
doing this. Maybe I should not be doing, so maybe I should raise my prices. And then I have to be like, I worked all this stuff out before. I already made these decisions, past me had a plan. I'm going to stick to the plan, but it's very hard. It's very hard to do that. So what do you recommend to someone who maybe that's where they're at? They are also being inundated, because a lot of people have told me they resonate with that feeling. You also mentioned like quarterly, monthly, and weekly planning. So maybe what are some of those practical things that they can do, like after they work through that assessment template that you have, which is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. What are some things they can do to realign themselves to that if they're feeling that right now of, I feel like I don't know where to go next?
Yeah. So I'd say just do a baby step. You don't have to do it all right away. When I know that some people hear quarterly, monthly, weekly planning and think, oh my gosh, that's a lot of work. So you don't have to do it all. And really the way your quarterly planning should feed into your monthly planning. So your quarterly planning should be about, what are all the things I can do this month to get to my goals? This quarter to get to my goals. And then your monthly planning is saying, okay, so of all the things that I've decided to do this quarter, what am I going to do this month? And then your weekly planning is, all right, so of the things I said I'm going to do this month, what am I going to do this week? So that way you're just chunking it down, and then you just end up with a weekly commitment. I know I'm going to do X, Y, and Z this week. And I know that because I'm doing those things, I'm actually moving towards my goals, and I don't even have to think about it because I already planned that out in the quarters. If you're not doing quarterly planning yet, I highly recommend doing quarterly planning. Do some type of assessment. The assessment that I'll provide the template, that will be super useful to do that quarterly planning. It's meant for that. If you don't resonate with it, you can find some other assessment that you can do, but I would do some quarterly planning every quarter, and then just let that feed your months and weeks for your planning what you're actually going to get done.
I love that. My audience loves to plan. Teachers, again,
Teachers, yeah.
we love a planner. We love to have our colored pens and have a sit down. But I also want to add to that, because I feel like you can get stuck in the trap of planning. So make sure that once you make the plan, you commit to it, and that you commit and execute on that plan, because it is
Yeah.
so easy to be like ever planning and then never actually releasing or doing the thing. So if you're like planning this product and you're like, I want to get this out in a month, then after you're done with the planning session, like your mini retreat or whatever you're doing, make sure you actually go and start working on it. It sounds so basic. It's of course, Brittany, but it's not.
But no, it's not yet. Yeah, you're
It's wow.
100%.
Like
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like I was actually before I was talking to a client, I recorded myself because I'm also working on a product. And I was like, Brittany, you do the same thing. So I actually recorded myself. This sounds so silly when I'm saying it out loud, but I recorded myself doing it to simulate the idea of having someone there staring at me. I know it sounds silly, but it worked. Okay. It was like it was like having a double. And so I sat there and recorded myself making the product, also thinking maybe I'll use that as content later. But the thing is, like, sitting there and actually doing it. And once you do it, you're like, oh, this actually doesn't take as much time. But all that time built up in your head of making the decision, what should I do next? What should I work on next? Should I run ads, or should I make another product? Should I start building up my website? Should I get into blogging again? Should I do this? It's just make sure you execute on the plan that you have. And if you're not planning, definitely I agree with quarterly planning. And I also have, it might actually be ready by the time I release it, but I also have a habit tracker that's related to that. So once you have your plan, go through your like marketing habit tracker and say, okay, I committed to getting on 2 podcasts a month. Okay, well, are you doing that? Are you executing on that? Have something to track your progress. And then also so you can reward yourself. Because on the flip side of that, we can also be doing a lot and then feeling like, oh, I haven't done anything. But then actually, when you look at it, you're like, I actually am doing things. It's just taking longer than I thought it would. So what you said about the shortcut thing, like these things often take a long time. We're also inundated with that marketing of make 6 figures in 2 months or whatever it is, ridiculousness. Yeah. And so we forget that like sometimes you do get a result like that, but we don't see everything leading up to that and how the person's actually been doing this for 6 years. And so they are very seasoned in their messaging and they've run the same thing 10 times before.
Yeah. And even though they made 6 figures, they may have only they only profited maybe 4 figures or figures or minus 5 figures. So yeah.
I had a rant on that. On a previous episode where I was just, okay, I'm in marketing, so I know what they're doing. but don't fall for it. And then also with revenue and profit, that's another thing where you talk about people aren't educated in that. And that's something, honestly, like I'm still having to remind myself when I hear those messages of, okay, like revenue and profit are different. And then also your take home is different because you
Yep.
as the person are paid differently than your business. And
Yep.
also depending on where you're at. So if you are listening and you happen to be in the beginner phases, you're making a couple hundred or a couple, like maybe you're breaking 1,000 a month with digital products, you might be pocketing that money, right? You might still be doing a sole proprietorship. You might not have set that up yet, but most people in my audience I'm finding they know that they have their businesses separate, but just remember that with your spending too, right? Because you also have to pay for your website, set that money aside for when you pay for it annually or monthly. And it's, again, these are really basic things that we don't really think about them until we actually have the time to step back and assess how our business is doing. Last month, I'll give you an example. I did this getting ready for Q3. And I was like, on one hand, I would like to take on a couple more clients. So I was thinking, I was like, I'd like to take on a couple more clients and have the revenue, but actually I'm going to hold off on that and see, are my offers actually as profitable as I want to be? So I actually went through all of my offers, all of my sales. And this, I would recommend you do this too. I went through all of my sales. So like of one-off coaching sessions, of like courses that I have, the little digital product, like $4 or $5 offers, all that stuff. And I went through and what's selling the most, but what's actually bringing me the most money, right?
Yes.
Which, if you're listening, I really want that to sink in, because if you have a VA helping you, for example, like you have them, maybe you have a template and they're using that template to create products for you. Yours is a little trickier because you're making lifetime value off of the product. So you won't see yours right away, but think, is that the best use of the time and money? Maybe it is. Maybe having a social media manager is great for you because it's generating you leads, but maybe it's not, right? So you have to be honest with yourself, or maybe it's not good right now. Maybe last year you were killing it, but then an algorithm changed or consumer behavior changed and you're not, right? It doesn't always trend up. Sometimes we trend down for a while. So I would
Yep.
say just be really honest with yourself. And so like me, I'm like, I'm going to chill on one-to-one work for a while and work on some more one-to-many things. Also because I'm seeing the need of like low ticket offers, of like people need a
Yep.
lower price point. So look at those things, but you don't know those things until you have enough time and energy and bandwidth to step back. And if you don't have the bandwidth, how can you get more bandwidth? So maybe you can speak to that because of VA and OBM. How can someone get more bandwidth to step back? They're like, no, I'm in the mix, Brittany. I'm doing things. I don't have enough time. I've heard this. I'm sure you have. I don't have enough time to sit there and look at my business because I have to be doing da, 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 da. So what would you do? What would you tell that person?
Yeah. So first of all, I would tell that person that your time is a choice. So you have to make the choice to do it. And you have to make the choice to actually look at your business. And by looking at your business, you will save yourself time and money. If you are only just working to get stuff done, you're missing plenty of opportunities to streamline, automate, and delegate in your business. And that's all ways that you're going to be able to take more of your time back and have more time for yourself. And there's also lots of different, everybody talks about you have to spend money to make money, which as a sound bite sounds great. And it can be true to a certain degree. It is correct. However, you also have to understand what you're spending that money on and why and how it's going to get back to you. But money is only one thing you can spend in your business. You also have your time, your energy, your effort, and your focus that you're also spending in your business. So if you're somebody who tries to work and listen to a podcast at the same time and multitask, you are actually stealing effort or stealing focus away from your business, because you're always half focused on this podcast you're listening to or this course that you're trying to run through while actually doing your work. And if you just spent a little more focus in your business, you'd probably get that work done way faster. So think about some ways that you might be able to spend more of those other resources in your business. And then when you talk about hiring a VA, like definitely hiring some support is certainly a great way to go. What support you need is dependent on you and your business and what's happening in your life. So I'd recommend that you do a time study of your time from the moment you get up in the morning to the time you go to bed. Write down everything you've done for every 15 minutes, write it down. What did you just do? And then categorize it at the end of the day, and doing it the whole day, because as a business owner, especially if it's for anybody that's still in the high side hustle phase, you're definitely not sticking to 9 to 5 hours or whatever. And then also because sometimes the help you need isn't in your business. I've spoken to a few people where the help that they would get way more out of getting help in their personal life than getting help in their business. So looking at your life as a whole, because you're a whole person and your business affects everything and your life affects everything. And you might find that instead of spending money on getting a VA who's only going to do 5 hours of work in your business a month, because that's all you need, maybe you could hire somebody to do your meal planning and shopping and prep and all of that for your meals. Maybe that might be time or money better spent. So really look at it before you make the decision, figure out when you're hiring, you're always looking to hire the right person for the right role at the right time. So it's really key to get those things right.
I love that. And one thing, I don't know who coined this, so I don't mean to not give them credit, but I just legitimately don't remember where I heard it. But it's that really easy saying, eliminate, automate, delegate, right? So what can I just take off completely? What is not actually helping me do anything?
Yep.
And the hard thing of that is some things are also just fun. Like I also am on the side of, okay, but if you're doing something and it's sucking your time, quote unquote, but you also really enjoy it, then it's not really a waste of time because you need it as a human, keep that. But in general, are there things in your business that are not really doing anything for you? And not everything has to be monetary. I tell people with Instagram, like Instagram can be a sales tool, but that's honestly not how I usually use it. I use it to position myself as an authority so I can get invited to speak on podcasts, so I can get invited to speak on summits, because I know those things will get me email addresses, which will then get me sales. So you have to run it through that lens of everything has its own purpose. But depending on where you are in business, that might not be a focus for you right now. You're like, no, I need to actually make products and make more money on the marketplace I'm on. Great, then do that. So is there something you can take out or pause for a while? It doesn't have to be for forever, just stop it. And then like with the groceries thing, like I started nodding because one thing I'm really into right now is organization. As you can see, I have all my stuff out. I'm like redoing my office, super excited for that because I'm finding that I'm really sensitive to my space. Maybe it could be that like someone helping you with like cleaning tips or organization or slow living. That's something else I've been personally really drawn to, is like slow living and gardening. I'm all into that right now. And even automating before you delegate. So like talking about someone, maybe you can't hire someone to cook for you or meal prep, but could you save time with Instacart? Or could you do the Walmart pickup? It sounds so silly, but that makes such a big difference because I'm in the grocery store. Oh my gosh, I waste so much time. And then I'm annoyed because I have to stand in line. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is such a waste of my time. So now I put everything in the cart. My order is pretty much the same. So that also helps me save money because I'm not wandering and, oh yeah, I'll get some chips. I'll get some cookies. I'm not doing that because it's not on the list. And so I save money, I save time. And then also I'm in Arizona. It's 103 today. So I don't want to get out of the car. They can just bring it to me. That's fabulous. So what can you automate and use tools, use subscriptions, all that? And then
even in your business, like figuring out ways that you can streamline and automate in your business. Because if like you said something about like you recorded yourself doing like creating a product and you were doing it for a couple of reasons, and one potentially content, but another third reason is you can then hand that off to somebody at some point and say, okay, now you can help me create, even if they can't do the whole thing, they can maybe help create a process around it for you. They could help create a project in your project plan, in your project management tool, so that you have all the tasks right there and you always know what to do, figuring it. And then you might also go, oh, I did it this way, but if I did it this way, that saves 5 steps, or this saves 10 clicks. Like anything you can do to save a little bit of time in your day is super handy. And I actually just found a tool, an AI tool that I started playing with. I haven't played with a lot, but it's a tool like it's like a Zapier tool, if anybody's familiar with that. But it has a lot more AI built into it, and it was like AI prominent, and it does little things like it saves you 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 2 minutes here, so that in the end of the day, you might have saved an hour or two of little things. Like one of the things, the first thing I tried was it just reads your calendar. And when you have a Zoom call, it automatically opens Zoom for you at the time of the call. So you don't have to go into your calendar, find that appointment, click the link, have it load up. And that's only a minute, 2 minutes tops, but it's a time saver. And it's also an automatic reminder. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be on a call right now. So finding just lots of little ways to streamline and little ways to automate it. You don't have to do big complex things. If you're recording videos and you need them saved in Google, connect your Google Drive to your computer. So when you record a video, it goes right there. Or use Zapier to take it from Zoom and put it where it needs to be. There's no reason for you to have to like do that manually. So
I
yeah.
love that. Zapier is another thing that like it's on my radar of I can see the potential with it, but I'm like, I just don't have the time right now. So that's like a future Brittany problem, but that's definitely something I'm looking at. And then like PayPal, which is ironic because if I did, I'd have more time, but it's not my
Yeah.
focus, I should say. It's not my priority. But like something like PayPal, for example, invoices. It's not that it's hard to do. It's not that it takes a ton of time. I just don't like doing it. It just makes me feel weird because it's that mindset of asking people for money, quote unquote. It just feels weird to me. One thing I started doing is I started scheduling them. So when I get a client, I have all the invoices I'm going to be billing them like bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. And I schedule them all then, and then I don't have to think about it. And PayPal sends them automatic reminders. It is fabulous. So things like that also, if there's just like a frog that you don't want to keep swallowing, they say swallow your frogs in the morning. What can you do? Just not have to deal with it anymore. It's amazing.
Yeah. And what I'd recommend doing if you've been thinking automation is like a future Brittany problem, and I'm going to do it at some point in time later, just do me a favor and just for the next week or so, just write down those manual processes that you're doing and just keep track of them. And then just take an hour a week from now to sit down with Zapier and see if you can automate even one of those manual processes. Because like all of those things, the manual processes, especially repeatable processes, 100% you can automate a lot of those things, and then it'll save you a lot of time. And the more it's automated, the less manual errors come up.
100%. There are some things that it's like one of those things that it's painful in the moment, but it's not painful enough as often enough to prompt me to do it. So that's why it's on the back burner. But I did write that down to set a date to do that. So like probably in Q4. It's not the focus right now, but in Q4 I do want to do that because there are things I want to try. I'm not sure if it'll work, but hooking up like even AI replies to things. I don't know. So we'll see. I'm playing right now. We'll see if I end up doing it. So good though. I think there were so many awesome ideas that someone could take from this episode to help them figure out what to do next. And I think we can actually sum it up with that little saying of so how to pick what's next. First off, make sure you're setting aside time to assess your business, and you can use Sandra's tool to do that. And then making sure that you have a time on your schedule, that you actually schedule time to plan. Like plan to plan, but it sounds silly, but if you're doing quarterly, doing monthly, prioritize that time. Don't let it get eaten up by something else. And then that filter of like eliminate, automate, delegate, right? So like you might need to hire, or you might not yet, or you might not need to hire for that specifically. It might be something where you find a new tool, or you are able to have an app or something, or just change the process itself. Like we were talking about, I was recording earlier. While I was recording myself, I went back and watched part of it just to make sure the audio was working and stuff. And I realized I'm like, spent a lot of time doing, I didn't even realize was like looking for emojis. And I'm like, that sounds like such a silly thing, but I was like, I didn't realize how much time I was like going into a new tab, going into that and finding it. So I'm like, okay, that's somewhere where I could probably save time. I'm not going to eliminate emojis because they're fun and they make my documents much way more interesting, but I could probably find a way to either have my most common ones in a Google Doc and have them just there, save time. So like making sure that you're doing that, also being more aware of where your time is going and what is actually working. But you don't know that unless you have time to not only plan, but then assess, right? You need both. So you need to assess and then make a plan based off that assessment. And then you need to actually execute the plan and then assess how it went. So it's like this cycle. You have to be doing all three. And if you're not doing all three, then you're probably going to feel overwhelmed and frustrated, like you're wasting time because you're like, I'm missing something. And it's probably because you're missing one of those three steps. Anything I missed there?
No, I think that's it. The only other thing I would add is make sure that you have an overarching goal that you're trying to get to so that you're always pointing in the right direction. And if you don't have a mission for your business yet, that would be the ultimate goal that you'd want to actually set up and create. But then definitely having like annual and or quarterly kind of at least revenue goals if you want to keep it simple. But yeah, the more you assess your business, the more fine-tuned your goals can become and the bigger impact you'll be able to have on your business.
Love that so much. So thank you again for coming on to the Social Media Magic podcast. I so appreciate it. I'm sure they do too. Can you tell people where to find you, where they can connect with you online, where they can find your template, all that jazz?
Yeah. So the template, if it's okay, okay, because I don't have a URL for it, I will send it to you, Brittany, with the URL right after this. Maybe you can add it to the show notes. But you can definitely find me at anyoldtask.ca or .com. Either way, it works. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at anyoldtask, and on Threads now. Threads is a thing at Any Old Task.
Threads is so fun. I keep getting tempted to talk. I'm not ready to talk about it yet because I need another week or two to actually make an assessment. But isn't it so fun? It's just the Wild West on there.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. The feed is quite diverse in just what people are talking about. Some people are like, use this for selling. Don't touch this. Don't do any selling here. And it's cat.
I know. It's like my marketers are like, we just can't help ourselves. We need to sell something. It's fun. It's wild to see what everybody's sharing.
It reminds me of Facebook early in the day. It's just like everybody using it for everything. So
it's fun. I think that's why it's fun, because it's just chaotic. What is happening here? It's so fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
All right. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.